Hello guys and gals, and welcome. So today I wanted to go over the Codex of Power Entries for the Rogue. That's right. So we're going to be going over all of the Codex of Power Entries for the Rogue and the legendary aspects that you can obtain within Diablo 4. Now these could be subject to change, obviously, by launch, but I felt like it was fun to go over these now. And these are the ones that are specifically locked to the sorceress, so to keep that in mind. Now, also keep in mind that the Codex of Power entries are the minimum versions of the legendary affixes. Now, to find the maximum versions, you're going to have to actually find those versions in the wild, and then, of course, rip those off of the item and put it on the item of your choice. But if you just need to build your character and you just need the effect so that you can actually play, the Codex of Power entries are actually pretty nice because they will allow you to make a functional character with those builds, and then you can focus on getting the higher versions later. The Rogue has some very interesting ones, and as we go over them, I think you'll agree. First off is the aspect of arrow storms. Lucky hit. Your marksman's skills have up to a 10% chance to create an arrow storm at the enemy's location, dealing 454 physical damage over 3 seconds. You can have up to 5 active arrow storms. So basically, like, just a lot of different little arrow storms all over the place. Next on the list is the aspect of the branching volleys. The aspect of the branching volleys is barrage's arrows have a 15% chance to split into 2 arrows whenever they ricochet. So you get a lot of extra arrows coming from barrage if you pull this one. 15% chance to split into 2, and barrage has a lot of different arrows. It actually shoots out multiple times from what I remember. So you've got a bunch of different 15% chances, which could add up to a lot of extra arrows coming out of this particular ability. We also have the aspect of corruption. Your imbuement skill effects have a 20% increased potency against vulnerable enemies. So vulnerable enemies already take 20% increased damage, by the way, which means we're going to have a 20% increased potency against vulnerable enemies. Next is the aspect of the encircling blades. The aspect of the encircling blades, flurry damages enemies in a circle around you and deals 8% increased damage. So flurry then basically becomes an AoE effect and gets a small damage bump in return. So honestly, that sounds pretty darn sweet, as long as it doesn't cause any negative effects also on top of that, like reducing the overall range of the ability or anything of that nature. Aspect of the explosive verve. Your grenade skills count as trap skills. Whenever you arm a trap or drop grenades, you gain 10% increased movement speed for 3 seconds. Now this is important because there are a lot of abilities and passives in the game which will increase or add things to the trap skills. And so having something like this, which will allow your grenades to count as trap skills, will allow you to apply those damage bonuses, crit bonuses, and things to the actual grenades. And this one is pretty cool because you can basically drop grenades all the time. So it says whenever you arm a trap, you drop grenades. So you're just going to always be dropping grenades all the time because you're going to be always arming traps all the time. We also have another one, which is aspect of the siphoned victuals. Aspect of siphoned victuals is lucky hit damage, or lucky hit damaging a vulnerable enemy with a core skill has up to a 10% chance to drop a healing potion. Now, sometimes this is actually kind of nice because in boss fights and things like that, there are occasions where you need more potions than what you actually have, and having the ability to generate potions could potentially save your life. So whether or not that would be useful for your specific build case scenario, or whether it would consume the spot of something more valuable, not really sure. But it could be interesting for boss fights. Next is the aspect of the Uncanny Treachery. Dealing direct damage to a dazed enemy with an agility skill grants stealth for 4 seconds. Breaking stealth with an attack grants you a 15% controlled impaired duration reduction for 4 seconds. Now, granted, this is very stealth-based, but dazed enemies is something that you're going to get a lot with the grenade skills. They definitely do a lot of dazing. And so this would probably be something that would work really well with the smoke grenade, as well as, obviously, physical melee skills and so forth and so on. So this is interesting, but it honestly kind of like strikes me as more of like a PvP something you would take in PvP to prevent yourself from getting locked down, which is a very prominent thing in PvP because they don't want you to run away. You know what I mean? Next is Aspect of Volatile Shadows. When a Dark Shroud shadow would be removed, you trigger an explosion around yourself that deals 45 additional damage. It's blowing up shadows, huh? Blade Dancer's Aspect. Twisting blades orbit for a short time after they return to you, dealing 10% of twisting blades return damage per hit. Based on the distance the blades returned, the orbit damage increases up to 20% of the return damage. So it just sounds like some free damage around you in a circle after they return, which isn't necessarily terrible, and could be nice depending on how much damage you've got running on your twisting blades. Even if it is 20%. 20% of how much could be a lot depending on like how much you've built up that ability. Next is the Blast Trappers aspect. Dealing direct damage to enemies affected by your trap skills has up to a 30% chance to make them vulnerable for 3 seconds. And as we know, vulnerable enemies take 20% increased damage. So that's pretty nice. And then we also have the Cheats aspect. You take 15% less damage from crowd-controlled enemies. Whenever a crowd-controlled enemy deals direct damage to you, gain 15% movement speed for 2 seconds. So this one is kind of cool because it gives you a way of defending yourself against enemies while also maintaining a specific build. So if you are a build that crowd controls enemies on a regular basis, you now gain a 15% damage reduction versus crowd controlled enemies. And then whenever a crowd controlled enemy deals direct damage to you, you gain 15% movement speed for 2 seconds so you can get the hell out of dodge. So it would definitely make a crowd control build a little bit more tanky and a little bit more, honestly, powerful because you would be able to get away from them even easier. Energizing Aspect. Damaging an elite enemy with a basic skill generates 5 energy. So just a way that you can generate more energy with your basic skills than they otherwise normally would, which is definitely kind of nice if you happen to be one of those characters that just burns energy like crazy. The Enshrouding Aspect. Gain a free Dark Shroud shadow every 3 seconds when standing still. Each Dark Shroud shadow grants a 2% increase in damage reduction. So not only does this give you free shadows, it also increases your damage reduction for each shadow active. Sounds like a very nice defensive mechanic that you can add to your rogue. Opportunists Aspect. When you break stealth with an attack, you drop a cluster of exploding stun grenades around your location that deals 302 total physical damage and stuns enemies for 0.5 seconds. So a very nice way to make breaking stealth a little more safe because the stun grenades will obviously do a good job at covering your retreat. Next on the list is the Ravenous Aspect. Killing a vulnerable enemy grants you a 50% increased energy regeneration for 4 seconds. And of course, vulnerable enemies take 20% increased damage. This would go good with a build that focuses on creating those vulnerable monsters. Next is the Shadow Slicer Aspect. When you cast Dash, a Shadow Clone is spawned at your location that also casts Dash, dealing 25% of the base damage. So basically just a doubling almost of the effect, but at a reduced amount of damage output. Trick Shot. Now, actually, you know what? I was just thinking, before I click off this one. There's another ability that makes it so that when you dash, you drop a smoke grenade. And there's another one, and this is not in here, of course, because these are ones that you have to find. There's another one that one drops a smoke grenade when you dash, and the other one drops a stun grenade upon finishing the dash. And I wonder if you had both of those and this one together, could you potentially be putting out 4 smoke grenades and 4 stun grenades? Would your shadow clone essentially double the smoke grenades and stun grenades, giving you even more spamming there? It could be interesting. We also have Trick Shot aspect, which is whenever penetrating shot damages an enemy, 2 additional arrows split off to either side. These side arrows deal 30% of penetrating shot's base damage and do not split. So extra arrows for penetrating shot. And then we also have the last one on the list, which is Vengeful aspect. Lucky hit. Making an enemy vulnerable has up to a 30% chance to grant 3% increased critical strike chance for up to 3 seconds. That lasts for up to, that goes up to 9% total. So you can stack it up to 9% crit. And honestly, crit is very nice, just in general in most video games. So having extra crit, up to 9% extra crit versus vulnerable monsters, again, this seems like specifically something that you would build with a character who is creating those vulnerabilities. And that's pretty much it for the Codex of Power entries. Who knows if there'll be more added in the future, and who knows if they will change them since this is the beta. But those are the ones that we have so far. I also have another video up if you haven't seen it already, which is the non-class specific Codex of Power entries, and you can potentially mix together, obviously, these with the others and make some very interesting combinations. It seems like a lot of the rogues are kind of based around stealth or vulnerabilities or dazes, like avoiding combat as opposed to actually participating in it, which it makes sense because she is sort of a stealth / ranged character after all. But she does have melee component as well, so curious. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just going over the Codex of Power. And as always, keep watching.